Today I'm going to make a Daft Punk Thomas helmet. For this build, I used EVA foam, craft foam, cardboard, putty, paint, super glue, hot glue, cutting tools, sanding tools, safety gear, scissors, razor pens, and a box cutter. Oh, wow, we're actually not going to use my standard helmet dome footage for once. Wild! This is actually a lot larger than the helmets that I've been doing lately, using my standard dome template. It's more rounded, but still somehow not a perfect circle, just to annoy me. It's more like a motorcycle helmet. I'll get into that in a bit. But for right now, I gotta make a new pattern. Just gonna start off with the half sphere. This is a plastic dome that I use to disguise my nuclear waste basket as a more accurate prop, as needed, which happens more often than you'd think. Hey, put it down! Now! Bad Cylon. Bad! No WD-40 for you. Gotta keep an eye on these things. They're always trying to drop nukes. I covered it with tin foil, then I covered the tin foil with duct tape. I didn't do the whole thing just because that'd be a waste of tape, and I only need half of it anyway. I drew cut lines on it with a marker, then I separated it from the hemisphere and cut along the lines. I flattened the whole thing out and then transferred it onto cardboard. Then I cut it out, and now I have the start of a new template. When it's finished, I'll make it available to you guys, linked in the video description down below. I just always start on cardboard anytime I'm making something new because I know I'll have to refine it later, and you know, if I mess up, cardboard's cheap. Then I traced it onto EVA foam floor mats. I cut the puzzles off, by the way. Then I cut it out with the work knife. Make sure to cut with the blade angled straight up and down, otherwise you'll get a ridge in your armor, which can be useful if you're making medieval armor or something highly stylized, but sci-fi, not so much. The EVA foam will dull out your blade, so you'll have to continually sharpen it with a knife sharpener. Then I heat form them. I did that by heating them up with this heat applying machine, not a hairdryer. Your hairdryer can't do this. In fact, it'll burn the foam if you hold it over the same spot long enough, which is why I do most of the heating up on the pattern side, which is going to end up on the inside when the helmet's done. Then I manipulated the foam manually until it was curved slightly, and then so that it would retain its curve, I set it inside a bowl while it cooled. When it cooled, I took it out and glued the petals together with super glue to make a foam hemisphere. The glue will build up and solidify on your fingers and is really obnoxious to wash off, so be sure to get in a few licks to break down the crust. Side tutorial, how to avoid getting blisters on your fingers. Might scuff up the neck though. Also side tutorial, that's how to make the shuttle bay doors on the USS Enterprise. Kidding. Do you have any idea how many sheets of foam it would take at this scale? Probably like 19, but see, it's the man hours, you know? I'd do it if I had the budget. Also storage. There's a guy in England making one out of cardboard at this scale, and I'm jealous. But like, England? How much it rains there. The electricity bill from the dehumidifiers alone. Ugh. Anyway, I made some refinements to the edge and transferred them to the template. See, that's what I'm talking about with fixing the mistakes as I go, so that you guys don't have to deal with them. The helmet is more circular than what I normally do, but it's still sort of an oblique spheroid. I hate that I know that term. Like an egg. It's like half of an egg as opposed to half of a ping pong ball. So I added more panels to increase the dome shape along the forward axis, and of course incorporated them into the templates. I applied the same slicing and heat forming steps as before, and glued the new piece into the helmet. This is going to make up the back of the helmet dome. It's not hugely obvious, but there is in fact a visible seam bisecting the helmet along the top. Then I used my original pattern without the extra shims to make a second hemisphere for the front of the helmet, and when I glued it to the back half, I attached what would have been the bottom to the top slightly inset so that I get that one seam, and also so that the vast majority of the seams are going to get covered up by the visor, and I'll have less puttying work to do later. Alright, so there's the oval dome, but it's a little bit lumpy, so I shot it again with the heat blaster to even it out a bit, and to help it a bit more, I made internal supports out of cardboard, regular thickness cardboard, shipping boxes. I haven't done this in years just because the helmets I've been building lately are more form-fitting and they just don't have room for internal supports. I glued those in, but didn't cut a space out for my head just yet. The visor is going to add a lot of structural integrity, so I don't want to weaken the interior until after I've added it. Okay, and that's a dome. Next, I made ears. They're just circles. All they are circles, just a couple of circles layered on top of each other with some hot glue sandwich in between. Worst sandwich ever. I made a third circle, slightly smaller with a beveled edge for the outermost detail. That's a very rough cut, so I had to clean it up on the belt sander. Once it was smooth, I added it to the stack. Well, okay, first I added a triangle bevel, then I added the thing. Next I chopped out a little bit of the helmet so that the ear would have a flat surface to sit on, and I glued it on with more hot glue. And because I know I'm gonna have to do a lot of puttying, I chose to eliminate the seam between the layers with a strip of 2mm foam, just so there'd be one less seam to fill. I repeated those steps for the other ear. Yay, symmetry! Now for the visor. I made 2 more internal supports out of cardboard. I glued one to the bottom and one to the top, so bridge of the nose and the forehead. For the actual visible brims, I made slightly larger ones out of foam. I cut that out, making sure to bevel the edge that sits up against the dome. I glued it on. Before attaching the lower one, I decided to work on the faceplate. Again, cardboard, foam, tools. For the mouth slit, I cut it out first by drilling the ends with a leather hole punch, just to give it a nice little rounded shape, and then I sliced out the space in between. Then I heat formed the mouth plate, but only the mouth plate. Rolled it up and stuck it into a cylinder, transparent for your benefit. When it cooled, I glued on the cheeks. Then I glued it to the helmet. Alright, that's starting to look right. And once it was secured, I was able to attach the lower visor brim. I did that with super glue. I'm alternating between super glue and hot glue based on how quickly it dries and how problematic the hot glue goop is gonna be. Mostly I just use the hot glue to shore up the frame on the interior and get rid of that disgusting can of otherwise wasted glue. Then I cut the last little frame panels out of 4mm foam. It says 6, but it really looks like 4 to me. I claim false advertising. These go between the visor and the ear. I cut them out and glued them on. Next, I added a back brim just from a piece of puzzle strip foam with the puzzles cut off. And now, I really didn't want to cut into this until later, but it's necessary for the visor placement. So I chopped out a hole in the front, and then I sliced out a vision slit in the front to look out of. See how much of those seams are hidden, by the way? I didn't cut out the whole thing, just because some of that foam is structural. It's load-bearing foam. What could go wrong? Next, I painted the interior flat black. This will reduce the reflection of the interior details through the finished visor. So this masking is kind of like how superhero actors wear blackout makeup underneath the domino mask. Next, I puttied all the seams that I want to erase using Daft Alex Fast Dry Putty because it dries fast. Does what it says on the tube. I had to do this in several stages to completely erase the seams. I'm smoothing it out a little bit with water as I go. In order to speed up the process, I put it on a turntable in front of a fan. The fan in my armory. Well, one of my armories. Long story. No, it's not. I build props for a living. Ignore the tiny, bloody stakes. I definitely haven't been hunting tiny vampires. I did a little bit of light sanding here before I painted it to smooth it out even more. This putty is sandable, but the belt sander is a little bit too rough and could strip out some of the filler. So I'm doing a lot of this by hand, and the weather's not cooperating enough to use Plastidip, so I'm just gonna use regular old brush paint. And foam acts like a sponge, absorbing the first few layers of paint, so I'm starting out with junk paint before I switch to the good paint. Evening out the color with a paint layer will reveal problem areas that you can miss when it's sort of a hodgepodge. So I fixed those in between paint layers with more putty. Once those were dry, I painted it with gloss black acrylic house paint. You have to really unload your brush before applying the paint, otherwise it'll run. This took 3 layers of that gloss black base coat before I could do the metallic top coat. After that was dry, I cut those out with the work knife, because I wanted to wait to get rid of the rest of this until the end, but I don't want to scratch the chrome, you know, I gotta force this a bit, so second from the end. Oh, I gotta be careful with the back right here, just because, like, this could go all the way through the foam. How did he lose a finger? Arts and crafts. Well, actually, I don't know if things have changed since I've been to school, but I feel like even in elementary school, they had, like, this giant guillotine in every single classroom for chopping construction paper. And it's like, how has no one been decapitated by this thing? Mask this off just so that I don't get any silver on the inside, because that'll be incredibly visible through the visor. That's just painter's tape and packing paper. At this point, I switched to chrome paint. I'll typically use Molotow chrome or autochrome when I want something to be really chrome. While the chrome is drying, I worked on the visor. See, that's also why these videos take so long. Shiny paint doesn't dry quickly. For the Guy Manuel visor, I used a complex method of vacuum forming and dye dunking, but since Thomas's visor is only curved along one axis, I can get away with using nightshade spray paint here to tint it. This plastic is from the leftover PTG plastic. Then I set it into the visor. Eat your heart out, Geordie LaForge. And that's how to make a Daft Punk Thomas helmet. Now all I have to do is learn how to play Instant Crush on guitar. Honestly, as a millennial, tying a half Windsor was harder. don't forget to like and subscribe. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you want this build to go easier for you than for me, then there's a link to the patterns for this helmet down below in the description. Also, I've got a tutorial for Guy's helmet, also linked in comments and at the end of the video. Oh, want to thank my patrons. These videos just wouldn't be possible without the support of my patrons. So if you enjoy these builds, want to see more of them, and want your build request to carry a bit more weight, then think about heading on over to the Patreon page, where you can enjoy ad-free early uploads. Anything you can pledge goes towards improving the video quality and shop equipment, as well as allowing me to put together bigger and more exciting projects for you on the channel. Alright, don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the bell icon to be notified of the future uploads, because it's kind of at a totally random schedule. And let me know what other props you'd like to see me make in comments down below. Thanks again, happy crafting, see you later!